This is Shawn of ShawnConrad.com. I was the post-production sound mixer for the first 4 or 5 seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the United States. I joined FourKids back in 2001. And just before that, I used to work on a lot of television commercials, radio commercials, and promos for television shows like King of the Hill, HBO's Happily Ever After, the first South Park radio commercial I did, and a bunch of other projects. After leaving the company that I used to work for, where I used to do those projects, I had an interview with FourKids, and they told me about what they were doing, working on these cartoon shows, and they had a new show coming out called Yu-Gi-Oh! But I couldn't remember the name of whatever the person said that they were working on, that they had coming out, and they needed staff for it to get ready for this show. And I really didn't want to go to that interview. I remember saying, okay, I have an interview tomorrow. I really don't feel like going to that interview. That's not something I want to do. I want to continue working on radio commercials, television commercials, and promos for all these big companies and brands. But I went to the interview anyway. They asked me about what I would need to do the post-production sound, and they told me they would get everything that I needed to work on the sound for not only Yu-Gi-Oh!, but they worked on Pokemon and several other shows. I took the gig, and I remember there wasn't a well-established system for recording files and naming all the voiceover takes we were doing for all these characters for Pokemon and all these different shows, including Yu-Gi-Oh! So one of the things I ended up doing after a while was coming up with a system, how we name the tracks and how we name each actor and character who's doing recordings and takes for these different characters on these shows. I needed to do that because we needed to make sure that we could find various takes for certain shows when we needed to. It just totally made sense. So doing that started bumping me up the ladder of my stature at the company and my position. I started to function as one of the lead post-production sound engineers there, along with a good friend of mine, Ohad, who worked on a lot of the sound design and also was doing mixing, I believe, before I got there. They were talking about this show, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and many people in the company, new hires were coming on, and we could not remember how to pronounce the name of the show. People were calling it Yugi, Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, it was all over the place. Some people had it right. That was like the higher ups, right? And eventually, we heard it enough to start saying it properly, and we started working on this show. And I met my good friend Eric Stewart. As we started to work together, we clicked immediately. I was really fast doing the sound work, very efficient. I prided myself on that, making sure I was very organized and I can get all this work done. And if we needed to go back and find takes, I can find them, making sure that I was recording quick enough and setting up quick enough so the actors in the vocal booth can quickly redo lines, right? Like that was very important. You don't want to do a line, get direction for how to fix the line, and then be waiting for me to set up the punch-in of the recording or anything like that. So I was very quick with that. Coming from my background of working on radio and television commercials, you had to be very fast. Eric Stewart and I clicked because, like I said, he wasn't just doing the voice of Kaiba and other characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! He was directing most of these characters. He was directing pretty much all of these shows. And he just had a way of being so smooth and so clear and not overstepping and not doing line reads for the actors. Just really masterful directing, and he and I just working together to get these episodes done. It was great. And we're still friends to this day. I remember Dan Green coming in and auditioning for the part of Yu-Gi-Oh! And trying to get Yu-Gi-Oh's voice just right. Like, how is Yu-Gi-Oh! Gonna sound when he's not Yu-Gi-Oh, when he's just the regular character before he transforms. Getting that right and working on that and doing various takes to get the right sound for the character before he turned into Big Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And then what is he gonna sound like when he does the transformation? And we worked with Norman Grossfeld and Eric and I and Ohad, and we had this fantastic team of people that were really focused on getting this sound right and getting this show done so it would be something that would stand the test of time. I remember all the main characters coming in to audition for their parts. Greg Abbey, Amy Birnbaum, Darren Dunstan, Wayne Grayson, all these people that I ended up building great friendships with because we had episodes to do for several seasons. And it was my job to make sure when these characters went into the vocal booth to do their lines, that there was no delay, there was no interruption with the art that they were trying to do. So no wait time between takes. Once Eric was directing them and giving them a way to look at how to do the line and how to think about the line, while Eric was doing that, I would rewind, find the punch-in spot, clear the space, make sure that I'm not recording over lines that we want to keep, and I was ready to go with pre-roll so the actor can hear what they were saying before the line they're about to punch in, and just making sure that they can do it worry-free. That was my job. Speedy, while Eric would be describing what he wanted to get from that actor, I would be listening to Eric, going to that spot so he doesn't have to tell me where to go, and making sure that things were just set up so that this could be a smooth operation. So we got to the point where Dan Green would come in and it would be this smooth flowing formula for getting all of the Yu-Gi-Oh lines. We would have Greg Abbey come in and do his lines for his character, and it was just smooth. If there were takes that we needed to go back to because maybe something was mispronounced, we can go back. And I made sure that I had all these notes, right, while I was recording. While I'm recording, I'm making sure that I'm writing down the good takes and the takes that weren't so good, right? And Eric and I are working in conjunction, and he's giving direction, which gives me the cue of where to go to record. I remember going to the grocery store one day, and I looked, and there was the cover of TV Guide, and Yu-Gi-Oh's image was on the cover. This is crazy. A show that half of the people at the company couldn't pronounce the name properly is like the #1 show in the US. It was crazy. And you can listen to Yu-Gi-Oh! You can listen to, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4. Listen to the characters. Listen to the main characters and how they sound compared to season 2 or even later in season 1. We were perfecting this show as we went. And everybody was just really on point with just working together and trying to make things excellent. And I mentioned my good friend Ohad, who mixed episodes as well, but he really took on the role of doing the sound design. All that sound that you hear in Yu-Gi-Oh, most of it, especially in the beginning, was from Ohad. And you'll see our names in the credits. And, a lot of times those credits go by fast or people are not watching the credits. But I just have to give a shout out to Ohad and the people who worked on this show. And there were other post-production sound engineers that came after. But, I'm just focusing on how we got this thing started and jumped off. This was a core group of people, from the actors to directing to sound, just everybody that I worked with at FourKids to schedule this, to make sure we were ahead of the game so episodes came out when they needed to. It was great. It was great watching how Darren Dunstan started to just nail the Pegasus lines. You know, it was, after a while he would just come in and you know when somebody's in the zone. You know when they're in the zone. He would just start nailing these lines. And I can't even tell you about all the things that were happening behind the scenes with just all these side jokes that we had. You know, Dan Green, you know, he had this line where it was like, your deck isn't strong enough. And you have to say deck very carefully because it sounds like something else if you don't say it properly. So we had all these side jokes where it was like, you know, your deck isn't better than mine, right? And you know, all these things that were happening behind the scenes with the different actors and all these lines. And sometimes we'd have to come up with different ways to say things on the spot, right? Change the script a little bit. So things would be less on the adult side and more on the, you know, okay, we're good. Kids can watch this and feel like they're good. Working with Eric and seeing how these actors work, that's how I started to hone my voiceover craft. Because I was recording all of these actors, and even before that, you know, working with Will Ferrell and Will Arnett and all these big name actors, I honed my own voiceover craft for voiceovers that I would later on do. Characters in some of these shows that I would do, incidentals, then moving on to get my own agent where I would do voiceovers for radio commercials and television commercials. So I really honed my skills on this show, on Yu-Gi-Oh! Working with all of these actors, working with Eric, and being the guy who's recording all of this stuff and then mixing it, making sure it sounded good on television. You know, for me, it was listening to other hit animated shows that were on television. You know, there was Batman, there was all these different animated shows that would come on Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning. I would listen to those and then make sure that our show sounded just as good or better. And that was a process. That was a process, making sure that the stereo field is wide enough, making sure that the sound effects are really coming through. Is the music too loud, or is my music overtaking the voice and the voiceover for what was going on? There was a lot of analyzing and listening to this episode, and from listening to that episode, doing a better mix the next episode, and so on and so on and so on, until we had this sound and I was able to mix these shows. Everything was consistent and the sound of the characters was consistent, and we had this monster hit on our hands that would stand the test of time. It's amazing to me how people today talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! And they grew up on it, and it's just amazing because I remember we had 2 sound rooms or 3 sound rooms, and then as the show went on and we got more shows because of the work we were doing on Yu-Gi-Oh!, we had to build more sound rooms and hire more sound engineers. Those sound engineers had to be trained. I had to show people what our format was for how we lay out the sound, the voice, the music, the sound effects, how we archive those, how we can set things up so the show can be done in another language for other countries. So those seasons from 2001 to 2005, that's my work on Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm very proud of it. And I'm so glad that you have enjoyed it over all these years. To make a living and to build a legacy working on this stuff is amazing. It's a once in a lifetime experience, and I'm very happy to have been part of it. Most of the main actors in Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time were trying to establish themselves, trying to maybe do something that would lead to the next thing. And them being active and working and perfecting what they were doing on those early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has led to tremendous opportunities and long-standing legacy and history. I just wanted to give you some insight to how this whole thing started way back in 2001 to where it is now. This is Shawn Conrad. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and I'm out. All these people that I builded